if you see something in culture that isn't sitting right, that isn't aligned with your values, how can we have the courage to say, I don't have to live that way. I'm going to choose a different culture and find a community of people who want to live into that culture with me and create a new culture and shift the existing culture.
What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gao Jr. of the Dad Central Show and Dad Central and
Drew Solon of Dad Central and the Dad Central Show. Hey, Ed, how are you?
I am outstanding, thank you. We've had a little uptake in the weather in the Greater Toronto area over the last few days, had some sunshine and some increasing temperatures, but those leaves just don't stop. And I'm telling you, the thing is, and I don't have any trees on my property. It's all the neighbors and the wind blowing onto my property.
I was going to say, maybe it's just your background. It's drawing.
No, I'm living it. I'm living it. Okay. I'm living it. How are things going with you?
Good. Speaking of getting ready for the winter, I've been looking at building, and I've done it in previous years, but I'm building a backyard rink. And every now and then I get the itch to upgrade it. So I got the itch, and I'm going to upgrade the backyard rink this year.
Okay.
All we have to hope for is that the weather actually works out. So we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it, though.
Hockey night in Drew family. Okay, yeah. Love that. Love that. It's a beautiful thing. Well, before we go any further, the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care, and Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of man, because when men care about themselves and others, there is positive impact. So we have another new friend on the show today, Drew.
Absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I think I'm going to learn a lot, but I'm also just going to hear some probably great wisdom. Just from the pre-conversation, I know we're going to.
Yeah, and I want to thank our new friend. We reached out, and not every time we reach out, we get a yes. So we love the yeses. So our new friend today is Iris Chen, and she is the driving force behind Untigering. It's a global movement of cycle breakers who are committed to the practice of peaceful parenting and self-directed education, honoring, respecting, and trusting in the inherent dignity and the rights of children as human beings. And that's going to come up during this conversation big time. Together, they are unlearning and dismantling the ways of tiger parenting with its roots in authoritarianism, domination, fear, and trauma. Particularly within the cultural context of Asian families. The vision of Untigering is to inspire intergenerational and cultural transformation through parenting practices grounded in anti-oppression, decolonization, nonviolence, and personal and communal healing. They imagine a future of collective liberation for all of us. So that is a big challenge, but it's an important challenge. And we have the lady who's behind Untigering with us, Iris Chen. What is up, Iris?
Hello, Ed and Drew. Thank you for having me. Yeah, just as you were reading that vision, it's just like, oh my goodness, it sounds so big and so like unattainable in many ways. And yet that truly is my heart.
Well, I think that's what makes it an inspiring vision, right? That it's big. You've got to go after it. But I love the transformational part and changing the intergenerational component of that, which I think is very important. So just commend you for the work that you're doing and looking forward to learning more. So Iris, could you just start by maybe giving us a little bit of background? So, before you got started on Untigering, kind of just tell us a little bit of your journey to maybe getting there.
Yeah. So maybe not everybody knows what tiger parenting is. And so tiger parenting is actually a term from Amy Chua's book. I think she published it in 2011, The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. And it was actually like this huge bestseller. It was like discussed so much among parenting communities. And tiger parenting is pretty much, she equated it with like quote unquote Chinese Chinese parenting, the kind of parenting that she grew up with, that she was practicing herself, where it's like very strict, very authoritarian, maybe not much emotional warmth, and really, really high expectations for your children to be high achievers. And so she said this is very typical among her communities. It was typical among mine as well. And so there was no term for that for me growing up. It was just like Chinese parenting, the parenting that I saw around me. Maybe immigrant parenting, or, a lot of other cultures can definitely relate to this. But so that's the type of parenting that I grew up with. And when it came to having my own children, I knew that I wouldn't be as strict as my parents. And yet there was still, an expectation of obedience, an expectation of high achievement and excellence. Those were definitely part of how I wanted to raise my children. And what happened was that my children were non-compliant. They didn't get the memo that that's what they were supposed to do, particularly with my oldest, who ended up being a very sensitive child. But I didn't read it as that. I read it as very difficult and emotional, disobedient, rebellious, naughty, all of those words, because oftentimes he was overwhelmed with life and with all the expectations placed on him, and had a hard time regulating his emotions. And I just thought he was being naughty. And so I would punish him more and send him to his room, remove privileges and toys, and have these consequences. And our relationship really began to devolve, and there was this constant conflict. I was always frustrated and upset and angry, and I didn't like who I was becoming. I didn't like the direction that our relationship was going. And I finally came to this point of desperation where it's like, something needs to change. This is not going well, which was different than how I was raised, because I was also raised with a very authoritarian type of parenting. But the way I responded to it was by obeying, by following all the rules so I wouldn't get in trouble. And I expected my kids to do the same, but no, they're like, this isn't working for us.
Can I pause and just ask a question about that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so that was your response to it. But did you ever have any difficulty with it?
I think what I noticed was that I would say yes on the surface with my face and with my body and my actions, but in my heart, I said no. So it created a lot of distance and resentment with my family. Like I didn't like it. There was like rebellion in my heart, even though like in my actions, I did everything I was expected to do. And I think it was a way for me to feel safe, for me to still be accepted, and feel a sense of belonging in my family, because I saw what happened if you didn't obey. There was spanking, there were negative consequences, there was like all of that. And so I realized, especially as I grew older, that obedience wasn't a heartfelt type of respect and obedience to my parents. It was really out of fear. Okay. And so there was one time when I went to a parenting workshop, and the speaker just spoke about brain science, which is something that I had never really explored, even though I had read a ton of parenting books, but a lot of it was like behavior management, like how to get your children to obey. Mm-hmm. But this was the first time I learned about brain science and what happened to our children's brains and bodies when we're yelling at them, when we're punishing them. Like it just it triggers their fight flight, that reactive response, and so they end up melting down or fighting back and all of those things. And those are not because they are bad kids, but because their brains are overwhelmed, and what they need from us is actually a lot of compassion and help and support. And so there was that was a huge aha moment for me, where I realized that the way I had been parenting was really not helping the situation, that I hadn't seen my children through eyes of compassion. And this really helped open my eyes to what was really happening with them, so that I could approach them with more empathy and compassion. And so that sort of that was one point. There were many points along the way, but that really led me towards this untigering practice where I'm trying to move away from these hierarchical, authoritarian, power over type of ways of interacting with children, and learning really how to share power with them, how to be in power with relationship with them. And so that's really what untigering is about. It's not only in our relationship with our children, but also for us, because likely most of us also grew up in that authoritarian type of parenting. So how healing our relationship with our children often involves healing our own inner child wounds, and dealing with the ways that we were parented as well.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm curious, Annette, you can hop in after this, Ed.
Sure.
How was this process happening with your partner?
Yeah.
At the same time. So can you talk a little bit about that and how you manage that dynamic together?
Yeah. So after that workshop, I went home, and at that time we had been really using very authoritarian parenting techniques like spanking and yelling and punishing and all of that. And so I went home and I told my partner all that I had learned that day. And I said, I have to stop spanking. Like, this has to be off the table for me. And he was very supportive, and I think we were both on like a personal healing journey ourselves, like where we sort of that inner child healing stuff that we were talking about. We were both on that journey. And so I think because we were doing that work, he was very receptive. We were both noticing ways that we had been parented through power, through aggression, through fear, that we were both really good kids and we were successful and did what we were supposed to do. But it created so much disconnection with our parents, created fear in our lives. Created disconnection with ourselves. And so we were seeing the fruit of that kind of parenting in our own lives and wanting to heal from that. And I think because of that, we were able to recognize some of the hurt and the trauma that we were bringing into our relationship with our children, and wanting to break those cycles as well. So he was very open and receptive to the untigering process, and we were really doing it together and keeping each other accountable in ways, because we were unlearning it together. So it wasn't like I was way on the other side and like trying to drag him along. We were like really learning together, and in that way there was like no shame or judgment. There was like accountability, and when we were noticing things like should we have done that, or like let's rethink how we worded that, or why we thought we had to give that punishment or whatever. There was a lot of partnership in that. And so I'm really grateful, because I know that that's not the experience for many families. Trying to make the shift is often one partner who's trying to pull along the other partner. But I'm really glad that we were on this journey together.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. A lot of, I think, great insight. Just the ability to work well together, to be open to each other's perspectives, to be on your own individual healing journeys, reflecting on your past experiences, but then bringing that healing process together and then reflecting on how you're parenting your children. I think really, really great practices that you and your husband demonstrated through that time. So that's great. Over to you, Ed.
Yeah, so many knowledge bombs and not enough time to go into all of them. But I'd like to, you mentioned a lot of good things, but from your own personal journey and how you're helping and serving parents and families, and we're here dads and families, how important is it to take time to examine your inner child and that impact it can have on your parenting?
I mean, I think that's the core of our work, actually, because I think sometimes when we think about parenting, a lot of it is, again, behavior management, where we're asking, like, okay, what do I do if my child lies to me? Or how do I get my child to go to bed on time? Or what if this happens? Or, so I think what is more foundational to the work is that inner healing, where we become more compassionate to ourselves, more able to hold space for all our emotions. Yeah, all of that. And so, sorry, you guys blanked out for a little. Are you okay? Are you there?
No, we're good. We're good. We're here. We're giving you space to share.
So, yeah, sorry, like the video stopped. But yeah, so I think once we are able to do that for our inner child, we are more able to do that to the child in front of us. Like if I can make space to have compassion for myself when I make a mistake, then when my child makes a mistake, I am more able to be in a space where I can hold them with that and not punish them, not shame them, not, use all these different strategies to try to get them to do better. And same with emotions, same with all of that. And so I do think that inner child work is core to who we are as parents. And so I like to think about it as like parenting is who we are as a parent and just as an individual, as a person, not what we do to our children. So it's really important for us as parents to do that work so that we can be our best selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so good. I'm wondering if you could give me your perspective on this, and I'll share just a personal, like a story first, and then love to get your perspective. So when I was, going through the same growth and healing process that you're referring to, and recognizing some practices that I was bringing into parenting that were not how I wanted to, I really had a difficult time forgiving myself. So I would make a mistake and I would be so hard on myself. I'm like, how can I do that? Like, especially thinking of how I was parented and wanting to do something different. I'm like, I would really struggle with that. Can you talk about your thoughts on being able to forgive ourselves as parents to, be able to show up at our best?
Yeah, this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, because especially if we've grown up in a tiger parenting paradigm where it is about perfection, about excellence, about the trying to achieve the ideal, and being really hard on yourself when you make mistakes or when you're human. And so something that I love to remind parents is that we are human, we get to be human, and our children get to be human. And really, untigering is about humanizing each one of us as parent, as child. Whereas tiger parenting is all about like excellence, achievement, success, like doing everything. Here's the rubric of what it means to be a peaceful parent. And you got to check off all the boxes. You got to get 100% and straight A's. And so like, we're still bringing in that tiger parenting energy into our peaceful parenting practice. And so I like to talk about peaceful parenting as a practice, not as an identity or as a goal or something we achieve, but as a practice. And so with practice, of course, we're going to fail. We're going to mess up. We get to be human. And so again, offering ourselves that type of compassion that we want to offer our children when they make a mistake. Like we're not always going to be perfect. We're not always going to get it right. And so how we can resist that shame for ourselves, just grounding ourselves in the truth of our inherent worth and our inherent belovedness, no matter our behavior. And this is something that maybe I can get into now, whereas a big part of this untigering and peaceful parenting practice is looking beyond behaviors. So not only for our children, but for ourselves, where behavior, oftentimes with parenting, we judge behavior. This is good, this is bad, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I want you not to do. But instead of putting judgments on it, calling things misbehavior, how can we see all behavior as communication and all behavior as an attempt to get a need met? And so if I am behaving as a parent in certain ways where I'm like yelling at my kid or I'm like really frustrated, instead of judging myself like that was so bad, I'm such a bad parent, I can show a lot of compassion to myself and ask myself, what need did I have in that moment? What need was I trying to meet? And again, going back to that inner child, asking that inner child, what triggered you? What was wounding for you in that moment that made you explode in a way that was probably not proportionate to what was happening in front of you? It really wasn't about what your child was doing. It's about something else. And so having that perspective with ourselves, also looking beyond our own behaviors, grounding ourselves in our unconditional worth, and understanding the needs that we were trying to meet or the wounds that those were pointing to in our own lives, and reflecting on that.
That's great. Something has been coming up for me, and I'm curious. You talked about the achievement, perfection, straight A's, 100%, get that done. And then you're talking about, kind of almost dismantling that in some respects. Maybe, and correct me if I said it wrong. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on how can those two ideas of excelling, being your best, still coincide with this untigering approach? Because I think there might be some listeners who be like, well, I want my kid to be successful. I want to be successful. I want to work hard. I want to do the things that are required of me. And do I lose that with this? How would you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole chapter in my book called Rethinking Success. And because I think sometimes our ideas about success are very externally driven, right? Where we're trying to achieve this type of success that everybody told us was going to make our lives wonderful, whether it's the amount of money we make or the type of career we have and all of those things, having a certain picture perfect type of family. And so those definitions of success are actually placed upon us by society, by all of these things. And so part of what, you're talking about dismantling those ideas of success so we can really learn how to define it for ourselves, because that really looks different for everyone. And so how not to sort of give away our power and try to achieve somebody else's definition of success, but really tapping into our own intrinsic motivation and our own personal values and living in alignment with that. And that is what gives us that sense of success, even though maybe from the outside looking in, that doesn't look like success. But for me, in my own experience, I can say that is success. So I think that's part of it. It's really turning like what I like to say is inside out, living from the inside out instead of outside in. And I feel like that's really consistent with this untigering approach, where, again, like understanding our inherent worth in who we are. And because we understand our inherent worth, we understand that we have gifts to share with the world. And so we do want to be excellent in what we offer, but we're not trying to achieve these things to gain our worth. We achieve these things because we are worthy, because we have something to share.
That's great.
That's good. There's a number of things that are going on in my alleged mind here. One of the things is just the culture clash of parenting. You're from an Asian background. Myself and Drew are from different backgrounds. That culture clash. The culture says that parenting is supposed to be another way, and parents could be from a different culture. That clash. What are suggestions you would like to make to our dads and our families on how do you handle those culture clashes, especially here in Canada? And you grew up in it. We have a lot of different cultures out there, and the dominant culture is you got to be like this. How does the Queen of Untigering give us some suggestions on that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I actually began this untigering process when I was living in China. My family ended up living there for 16 years. And so this type of parenting is definitely countercultural to the type of parenting I saw around me. And even as like an Asian American, the type of parenting in my community. I think even though I am Chinese, I was living in China not like sort of like a foreigner, right? Because my first language I'm not fluent in the language. I'm not part of that culture. So I was already living counterculturally in some ways over there. I think what was helpful for me in living outside the dominant culture was that I knew that I needed to create my own culture. And maybe for many people who are multicultural or bicultural, living in a dominant culture that isn't their own, there's a privilege in that. And there's like a benefit of knowing that you have to define your own culture. You have the freedom and the responsibility in some ways to create your own culture. So when I was living in China as an Asian American, I had to choose in some ways what was important to me, what was important as part of my Chinese culture, what was important as part of my Asian American culture, what was important as like my American culture, and to let go of a lot of the things that didn't serve me in this context. So I had created my own culture, and I think that is something that, especially as we're trying to break cycles, to know that we do have the power to create our own culture, because culture is man-made. Culture is a construct. It's not static. It's changing all the time. And who changes it? We change it. We as the people change it. And so even like the work that you're doing, shifting the conversation for dads, that's shifting culture. And so instead of if you see something in culture that isn't sitting right, that isn't aligned with your values, how can we have the courage, the conviction to say, I don't have to live that way. I'm going to choose a different culture and find a community of people who want to live into that culture with me and create a new culture and shift the existing culture. So I think that's my encouragement to the dads, that you do have the power, and to do that inside out living again, living in alignment with your values and finding community with other families and parents and dads who share that culture.
Iris, 100%.
Yeah.
100% on that. And I think we're a group of, in a good way, one of the most popular words in our culture today is disruptors. We're good disruptors.
Yes. And that is so needed, because Yeah, we need those people who are going to not just maintain the status quo. Otherwise, things would never change. We would never break cycles. Things would never improve. We need those people who are willing to like lead the way and be pioneers and be disruptors.
Are you a dad who feels like you're juggling a million things at once? Balancing work, family, and personal goals can be overwhelming. But what if there was a solution? That's why we created our new fatherhood community called Dad Mentor. For over 20 years, Dad Central has built practical tools to help dads. We understand the challenges you face and provide the support you need to thrive. The biggest complaint we hear from dads is there's no dedicated support for their specific needs. But not anymore. Our new community, called Dad Mentor, is here to transform your fatherhood experience. Imagine feeling in control, staying calm and patient when your children misbehave. Picture yourself connected to your children, guiding them with confidence and watching them succeed. When you join Dad Mentor, you'll have access to a community of like-minded dads committed to their dad journey, just like you. You'll also get the Dad's Roadmap. This is a step-by-step plan to help you go from unsure to unstoppable as a dad. Monthly masterclasses and Q&A sessions. You'll get answers and know exactly what to do straight from experts. Monthly group meetups that connect dads over common topics. A dad's resource library. Curated webinars, podcasts, or guides built by Dad Central to help you grow as a parent. And finally, you'll also get exclusive members-only offers and events. Now, many dads do try to do this fatherhood thing alone, only to find themselves trapped in frustration and strained relationships. Then they may turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms like drugs, alcohol, or other distractions, leaving their family and their own well-being at risk. We don't want you to reach that point of regret. Take steps to invest in you and your family today. Join Dad Mentor and go from stressed, tired, and overwhelmed to confident, calm, and connected. Join us today by going to dadcentral.ca/dads.
Well, just on that last point, it reminds me, I'm not sure if you've ever seen this viral YouTube video of how do you start a movement? It's this one teenage kid on this hill of like a bunch of teenage kids at like a concert. And he's the one kid that gets up and starts dancing. He's not a great dancer, but he's dancing, doing his thing like nobody's there. And at first, everyone's like kind of looking at him, laughing at him, like, what's this guy doing? And next thing you know, one by one, people start to join him. And next thing you know, the whole hillside is dancing. So anyways, just a viral YouTube video. And so want to be that one kid who's got the courage, and conviction to get up, dance, maybe look a little silly, not even sure if anyone's going to join you, but you're willing to do it just because you feel it.
I love that. I love that image. And I really feel like that's sort of what happened with untigering as well. Like, where I just started blogging about my experiences and did it out loud, did it publicly in the public sphere, because it's one thing to like dance in your room where nobody else sees you. You have to put yourself out there so that other people know that you're being your full authentic self. And they feel more free to join you, in moving and dancing. And so for me, starting my blog in 2017 was part of that, where I was like putting myself out there, doing my like silly dancing, not thinking that anybody would watch me or whatever, but still putting it out there. And then, lo and behold, years later, so many people have joined me on that hillside, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great.
Wondering if we could talk a little bit more about this idea of redefining success as a parent, or even redefining success for your family or your children, because I want to share again a little bit more from my experience. So my work for the last almost 10 years has been at a school of business, working with students to help them achieve their career path. And it's one of the top rated business schools in the country. And we have 9,000 applicants for 450 spots. So you get the best of the best. And these students are remarkable, at least the undergraduate, at least. And we serve students from all across, but undergraduate in particular. And we do have a lot of Asian students. And many come into my office and they describe the exact thing that you've described as far as expectations, standards, et cetera. And a big part of my role as coach, at least how I view it, is I want to help them discover what their passions are, discover what their aspirations are, discover their goals that match with them. And many times in these conversations, not just Asian students, but many of these high achieving students coming from various backgrounds, but they have this internal conflict of what I want to do and I feel excited about, and what the school culture says is cool or a success, what my parents say are success. There are parents and the school environment create the most amount of internal pressure. And many times students have broken down, they've cried, they've expressed just this internal conflict. I wonder if just your thoughts on this idea of how do you think that redefining success at home as parents first and as with our children might help adjust that so that students show up with less internal conflict, but more passion, energy, focus, determination to pursue their dreams authentically in a way that is going to actually make an impact the way that they want to make. Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think in the bio that Ed read, it says that that part of this Untigrary movement is to advocate for self-directed education. So we are an unschooling family. That's been part of my untigering journey, where the more I was doing this practice of peaceful parenting and honoring my child as full human beings, how I just came to believe that I needed to honor them in all areas of their life, including their education. So it's not like, okay, you have, I respect you in this area, but then in the area of education, I still have all the control and I still need you to meet my expectations. So really releasing that and empowering my children to be self-directed in many ways, choosing to learn through life and through doing the things that they love. And so I think something that I really try to, empower parents to do, because I do think a lot of the pressure does come from parents, but also the school culture. What we can do as parents is to really empower our children instead of put pressure on them. Again, to remind them that their grades are not a metric of their worth or how good they are or any of that. So absolutely reminding them of our unconditional love for them and acceptance of them. So in my book, I talk about Maya Angelou's quote where she says, "Success is liking who you are, liking what you do, and liking how you do it." So this is the type of success that I want to empower parents to have, as well as like empower our children to have, where it's not me as a parent telling you who you should be or what you should do, but really giving each child the agency to define that for themselves, liking what they do, and liking how they do it. That's how I like to define success nowadays, so that each individual gets to really flesh out what that means for themselves. So I approach it from the parenting perspective of creating that safe space for children to do that. I think if you are a grown adult struggling through that goes back to the inner healing that we have to do, right? Where we received a lot of messages about what makes us worthy, what makes us special, what gives us value in life, and needing to question a lot of that, so that the perfectionism, the hustling, all of that really contributes to struggles with mental health now for many young adults in that situation as they're pursuing a career and trying to figure out what their path is in life. And I think if if we created more of an environment that felt safe for them, safe to fail, for one thing, instead of feeling so much pressure, safe to really pursue the things that they love, safe to know that they are unconditionally loved and worthy, regardless of, whether or not they start a new thing or how many venture capitalists they have, signed up to support them, all of that. I think that can really help young adults who are growing up with that stress and that pressure that they feel.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah. How has untigering impacted you? How's it changed to you?
I mean, it has been so transformational to me. And I think that's why it's a message and a movement that I am really, really passionate about, because it has completely transformed my family and me. I was sharing in the beginning the point in my relationship with my children where it was just so fraught, so much anger and tension, and I didn't know if I liked my child anymore, and that was a scary place for me to be because I couldn't control him, and I wanted to control him, and he wouldn't be controlled. And now my children are 15 and 13. I have 2 teenage boys in the house, and we just have such a beautiful relationship. And so I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for the connection and the trust we have, where I don't have to resort to punishment. I don't have to resort to intimidation or fear or shame or any of those tools. But there's trust and there's love and respect and all of those things, and it's completely transformed my own relationship with my family, and it's transformed me. Where, again, that inner child, where I don't tiger parent myself anymore, or I try not to. Where I try not to shame myself. I try to encourage myself instead of be critical of myself all the time. So it's just, just been such a huge change in my own life that I'm really excited to share the possibilities for other parents and other families who are hoping to make that change too.
It's wonderful.
I have one quick follow-up on that. Can you talk about how untigering and this journey you've been on has impacted your relationship with your own parents?
Yeah, I think it's, again, just that same grace and compassion that I want to offer myself, more able to offer that to my parents as well, to humanize them as well. When we're children, we see our parents as gods in many ways, where they are, they shape our whole view of the world in many ways. And then when they fail us, then they become our enemies. They become like the devil. We were so disappointed by how they failed us. And I think part of the healing journey is that we get to see them as human. They are flawed, just like we are flawed. And so, again, learning to accept them and love them, appreciate them, have compassion for them, just as I would for myself. And so I think that has, telling my story out loud, even though a lot of people ask me, what did your parents think about your book? Because it's not the most flattering in some ways. And I talk about, my perspective of how I was raised. And so, but I think it is part of my healing journey to be able to name the ways that I was wounded, and yet still have a lot of compassion for them and all that they went through and all that they've struggled through. So holding those two in tension, it doesn't have to be a binary. It doesn't have to be, either I accept them fully and forgive them and everything's great, or I reject them and cut them out of my life. I think there's a tension that I hold, and both can be true at the same time.
Thank you for that. Well said. Ed?
Well, I was going to ask about the parents piece, but I just ask, in your untigering, do you have the opportunity to have positive impact on non-Asian parents?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it, not just for, just in my book, I write a lot about my Chinese American experience and a lot about my culture. And part of that is because there's so much literature, like parenting resources out there, that don't address culture at all. And where a lot of the experts or whatever are white, don't bring in issues of like immigration or of the need to assimilate, or just they don't address those issues at all. And so I think even as an Asian American, for other BIPOC folks, for other people of the global majority who aren't Asian but can see their stories reflected through mine, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity. But also, even if you're a white family or whatever, I think it's just like anybody who's grown up with authoritarian parenting for the most part, or just even mainstream parenting that isn't super strict, but we still using different ways to manipulate children to try to manage behavior, maybe in nice, sweet ways, like, oh, I'll give you an ice cream if you do this. That's still stuff that we want to move away from, as we want to treat children with respect. And that's just not respectful, as we, try to incentivize them and manipulate them through these, extrinsic strategies. So.
Okay. Drew?
Well, Iris, thank you so much. As I said at the beginning, I was excited for the conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's brought up some elements that I hadn't thought about recently, but we're able to bring forward and hear your perspectives on. So it's been a wonderful conversation. I just thank you so much for sharing your story and being, I think, very open and honest and real. And that, to me, is really how I think people are engaging and connecting with you, because of the realness of what you're sharing, and but also the power of the wisdom that you're bringing. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being on our show today. Where can people find more about you and untigering?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, untigering.com, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, mostly at untigering, so you can find me there as well.
Yeah, and don't be shocked about how many followers she has on Instagram and Facebook. I think you are our first friend that has over 70,000 Instagram followers, and you have about almost 120,000 Facebook followers. So you're doing some great stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, I also want to just thank you for sharing with our family today. And I want to bless you, because untigering is a cultural thing. People may see you and say, oh, this is only a story for, no, it's a universal parenting journey. So we want to thank you for taking the time to sharing with us. And if there's anything we can do going forward to help what you're doing, and reciprocal both ways, we just want to say thank you, and looking forward to hearing more from you, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. All right, Drew, untigering.
Well, I think I need to let you go first so I can.
That's why I didn't just say much. I could go as long as you. What I will say, there's so many things, but one of the things about parents, not only do they need, or we need to do work as parents, but we need to do work on ourselves. I think it's a point of a number of parents that I'm sure you help, I help. They think all they have to do is work on their parenting, but maybe there's some inner work they need to do in their selves, in addition to their parenting of their child or children, that I'm almost going to say is necessary, because there's no perfect parent. So being willing and receptive to do some untigering, whether it's on the way they were raised, what they think, etc. That's one of the many knowledge bombs that have stuck with me during this conversation. How about you?
Well, I'll just share one, and I think it was that last point that I made to Iris, is that she was very real and open and honest. She talked about the pain and the struggle that she went through as a parent, and I think that it's hard as parents sometimes to admit that we're having a hard time, or that it's not going well. And, to express those things openly to others is scary. It takes courage, right? It takes, and we've talked about this on the show before, vulnerability. And so I think that that's a very important and powerful takeaway for me. It's just her willingness to look the hard parts in the mirror, acknowledge them, and say, okay, but now how are we going to move through this? And I think, again, there's a lot of strength, a lot of courage, but a lot of vulnerability required to do that. And I think that's necessary for that parenting journey, to see the change in the children and break the cycle and create the transformation she's talking about. So that really stood out for me.
Yeah, it's all about making a decision and taking that first step of action, which she said she did. That's like she said, I'm not going to give discipline my kids. That was the first step. And now I'm sure that was a big first step, but with that first step came more steps after that. So that's absolutely fantastic. Appreciate what you just shared there, Drew. Hey, we love people to get in contact with us. So if you have suggestions, if you have comments, feedback, we'll take it all. Email us, podcast@dadcentral.ca. If you want to listen or watch any of the epic conversations we have with our growing company of friends, podcasts, dadcentral.ca/podcast. And we have a lot of free resources out there on our website, dadcentral.ca. So as always, want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen or watch us. Just remember, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourselves grace, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well and keep the faith.